Welcome to my channel. It's me, and today we're going to answer an age-old question. Why does airplane food taste so bad? We have new science that reveals why it tastes weird at 35,000 feet. Plus, we have brand new data from airlines and a mystery ingredient that could be to blame. Are they really that bad? And why do they taste so different at 35,000 feet? Well, today, we're gonna dive into this question. Today's video is structured like this. First, we'll break down the science of taste. And then we'll share some of the latest findings about how airlines are trying to fight back against bad airplane food. And by the way, a big thank you to everyone who supported us this year. You helped us grow our team, and we made our biggest video yet. And we've got lots more coming. So if you want to see more epic questions answered, now would be a great time to hit subscribe. Okay, let's get into the science. How does taste work, and why does it change on planes? Let's start with a quick breakdown. Our sense of taste works thanks to these little guys called taste buds, which live inside our mouths. And when we inhale something, like when we smell a delicious cake in the oven, it activates these tiny hair-like receptors inside our noses. Together, our sense of taste and our sense of smell make our food taste delicious. But here's the problem. Airplane environments are very different than regular life. When you step onto a plane, you enter a world of dry air and loud noises. And those two things affect both our sense of taste and our sense of smell. In fact, according to some studies, they reduce our sensitivity to certain flavors by as much as 30%. So basically, the plane environment dulls our senses. Let's look at two recent research studies to learn more. The first was conducted by the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany. Back in 2010, they wanted to figure out how low pressure affects our sense of taste. Their hypothesis was that since planes fly so high in the sky, their low pressure environment might trick our bodies into thinking that we're at a higher altitude, which would make our taste buds less sensitive. So they tested their hypothesis in a lab where they lowered the air pressure to simulate various altitudes. Here's what they found. Compared to normal sea level, at 8,000 feet, our ability to perceive salt and sugar decreases by 30%. At 10,000 feet, this decrease increases to between 20 and 30%. And at 30,000 feet, which is the cruising altitude for most commercial flights, our perception of salt and sweet drops between 10 and 20%. Basically, the thinner the air, the less sweet and salty food tastes. The second study was led by researchers at Cornell University back in 2015. This study focused on the noisiest part of flying, the airplane engines. They wanted to find out if loud noises could change the taste of food. To do this, they played recordings of airplane engine noises, while participants ate some snacks. They found that loud noises did in fact affect taste. Noisy airplane engines reduced our ability to perceive sweetness by 12%. But interestingly, they also boosted the taste of savory umami flavors, like the ones you find in tomato and seaweed, by 10%. British Airways actually did their own study on this, too. They found that at 85 dB, which is about as loud as a busy restaurant, the sweetness of food is reduced by 30%, but the savoriness of foods is increased by 40%. That's a massive difference. Now here's another important factor. Dry air and loud noises aren't the only differences between airplane food and restaurant food. Airplane food is also served at a much lower temperature. In restaurants, we're used to eating hot meals, but on planes, safety regulations limit how hot meals can be. According to the FAA, food served in flight must be between 125 degrees Fahrenheit and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, or 52 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius. Since airplane food is served much colder than restaurant food, it takes longer for our tongues to register its flavor. So after learning all of this, you might be wondering, why do you want airlines just add more sugar or salt to their food to compensate? Well, there are actually some limitations. For example, adding too much sugar would make the food taste even worse when you consider the effects of the plane environment. Plus, over-salting food can increase the blood pressure of some passengers, which can be dangerous. Up next, we spoke with 3 experts to see what they had to say. First, we reached out to a food scientist who's worked with various airlines. He told us that to solve the problem of bland food, Many airlines reformulate their recipes before serving them on a plane. For example, to make sure food tastes salty enough in the sky, they may add extra salt during the cooking process. But there's a catch. Adding more salt doesn't always improve the flavor. Salt contains sodium ions, which carry an electric charge. When you eat salt, those charged particles help activate certain sodium receptors on your tongue, which signal that food is salty. But because of the way airplane food is prepared and the effects of the plane environment, those receptors might not fire correctly. So instead, some airlines use a substance called MSG, which contains glutamate, a type of amino acid that enhances savory flavors. We also reached out to the head chef of Lufthansa's catering kitchen. They serve over 100,000 meals every day. He told us that his team has developed some tricks to make food taste better on a plane. For example, to compensate for blandness, he said that they boost the amount of fresh herbs and spices that they use in their dishes. On top of that, they also try to play around with the temperatures of individual ingredients to make them taste better once they all combined. Lastly, we spoke with an NT specialist, and they told us that the dry air in a plane cabin can cause nasal dryness, which can significantly dull our sense of smell, which is a major part of what makes food taste good. Now that we have the science and expert opinions down, let's move on to our taste test. We recruited 5 volunteers who came to our studio and ate the exact same meal on the ground. Half of the participants ate the dish again, but this time we put them in a simulated cabin to mimic the conditions of a flight. We played sounds of jet engines at 85 dB, and we turned off the air conditioning to reduce the humidity in the room. This is what it sounded and felt like, and this is what they said. So our first participant said, "I definitely feel like the chicken tastes blander mid-flight." Our second participant said, "It's almost like a completely different meal." Our third participant said, "Oh, it's completely different. The rice is crunchy and the chicken is watery." Our fourth participant said, "I agree. The chicken is definitely blander." And our fifth participant said, "Same exact meal, different experience." So what they're describing is consistent with the science we learned earlier. Now, by the way, if you want to see the full unedited version of this taste test, you can check it out in our community tab. If you want to make your meals taste better on a plane, we actually have one piece of advice that might help. After speaking with several airline catering experts, we learned that you should always try to order tomato juice on a flight. They told us that because of its high umami levels, it's the perfect drink to enjoy during a flight. Now, we want to hear from you. Does anyone watching still think that airplane food isn't bad? Comment your thoughts down below. In a previous video, we learned why Bloody Marys are so popular on planes. It's because of the high levels of umami. Now let's move on to our final segment. Not all airlines are giving up on making tasty airplane meals. We've actually been impressed by some of the creative solutions that some companies have come up with. In particular, we've been impressed by Singapore Airlines. They partnered with various celebrity chefs from around the world to develop new recipes for their passengers. And they've spent millions of dollars redesigning their entire in-flight menu. Some of the chefs were even flown to 30,000 feet to experience the effects of the plane environment firsthand. Here's one quote from the director of Singapore Airlines. "When developing new recipes, we work with our culinary team to adjust seasoning levels to ensure that the dishes taste appetizing at 30,000 feet. So they're actually doing everything that we recommended in this video. They're adding more glutamate, they're increasing the amount of fresh herbs. They also pre-searing meats in their kitchens to make them taste better once they re-served at a lower temperature. And they readjusting the thickness of their sauces to make sure they do not look watery on a plane." Here's a fun fact. Thick sauces tend to look runny on thin airplane trays because the surface tension of the liquids is disrupted by the air. So some airlines like Singapore Airlines, they actually thicken their sauces a little bit. Now we have one final question for you. Isn't it weird that even Michelin-star chefs can't seem to fix airplane food? So considering that, why do you think airplane food tastes so bad? Well, now you know the science behind it. Hopefully this video answers your burning questions. By the way, if you have more questions, leave them in the comments below and we'll do our best to answer them. Now this brings us to the end of our video. Thank you for joining us today. Subscribe for more epic questions answered. As always, stay curious.